Everyone's got to remember to talk into their mics so Arlene can hear us because she's homesick.
Get well, Arlene.
I'd like to call the May 9th Planning Board meeting to order, please. And the first on the agenda is approve our minutes from last meeting.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second by Dave. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, next is Arlene's voucher, but unfortunately,
Do you want to say who? First of all, you have to let her know who's the voting members tonight.
oh yeah, I'm sorry, Arlene, if you're listening to us. Amy and Brad are voting members tonight. Did you guys just vote on that one?
I did.
Amy, did you?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Approve her voucher, but I don't have the form, but let's approve it anyways. Motion,
I'll
moved.
make a motion.
motion approved. Brad second. All in favor?
Aye.
Next on our agenda is Black Hills Farm Corp. Come on up, sir. Yeah, I'll tell her.
Okay.
I'm sure she'll see it's not Zoom though. Okay, I don't think we need to get into a whole lot because I think we all remember what happened last time around. So it looks like you're trying to get a special use permit to do the sheep on the solar farms.
Correct.
Correct. And to what I've been told, that's way better than lawnmowers and pesticides and.
Absolutely. It looks good for the town in terms of environmental friendliness. It brings food security to the community.
Yep.
We want to build a whole learning environment around it for the high school. I mean, that's in the future, but
Yep. Okay.
there's plenty of benefits to.
Does
keeping
anyone
sheep
have
as
any
opposed to-
questions of the applicant? Norm?
Not so much questions of the applicant, just questions of the procedural here. It's not a permitted
Norm.
use.
Mike, you got to get into your.
Agriculture is not a permitted use within that zone. So unless we get a use variance, I don't believe that we can take a vote on a special to make this happen. So I think it has to go before the zoning board first to get a use variance to allow agricultural use.
I agree with that. I think that's the way it has to
Could,
go.
could we have a motion, Norm, that would include pending zoning board approval? This board would agree with the special use?
I think we could, Dave, because we've done
Then it
that
wouldn't have to
before.
come
on
back
other
here.
Yeah,
matters.
so we don't hold them up longer.
I agree with you,
I have no
but
issue with
maybe
that.
this is a way of moving it along.
Yeah, I mean, it's procedural.
Yeah. Right.
Hold on 1 second. What do you got, Bob?
Since I don't have a mic with, one of the questions that's kind of kicked around downstairs, and I don't know if we're trying to get, Casey or Ron or their group is trying to look at it, or Rhonda from zoning, but is lawn maintenance a use? Because what he's, and that's what we're trying to solve, one of the questions, because literally the act of having the animals there is lawn care. So we're not really, is this, he isn't a farm raising for meat or something. It's literally, I don't know. That's where we're trying to wrap our heads around. So, I don't know if this board wants to, ponder any of that type of stuff or understand that piece of the puzzle. So
Well,
I just kind of leave that there.
Backing up a step, if you will, because when the solar farms or this farm or these two farms were created, they were created based on a special use permit. That's my understanding. So there's already a special use permit in place for the function, which is a solar farm. And so this is a permitted use within a permitted use, so to speak, but it's clear that the solar farm is going to have something chop down the grass and the flowers and the weeds and so on and so forth, so they don't take over the panels. And, the whole point of this thing is maintenance, whether it's done by humans with a mower or whatever. And just from the reading of the material that was distributed, it seems to me the sheep can get in and around these nooks and crannies a lot easier than a human being with a weed whacker or, whatever you want to call the machine.
Spark breaking work to physically go in there and mow. The sheep do it a lot easier, save everyone time. not
Yeah, it's probably in the long run, maybe more economical for the solar farm.
for everything,
to-
right.
Yeah.
So how many sheep do you normally deposit in the fenced in
Totally
area?
depends on acreage. So, I mean, it could be anywhere from 10 to 60.
Okay,
What would change is how long they're there for. So, you know, the standard measurement is 3 sheep per acre per year. So based off of that, you can figure out how many sheep you can put on the solar farm for how many ever weeks, months, whatever it may be.
Yeah, and when you're saying per year, that's really not 12-month period.
It-
That's
it-
more
it just-
summer growing season.
Yeah.
And they're not gonna be there eating in the winter.
Yeah.
so you mean you just leave them there the whole
Yeah.
time?
Yep,
Yeah.
we leave them there. We bring minerals and water, and then we check on them occasionally. Well, 2 to 3 times a week. And the fences that the solar farms have are, I mean, in terms of agriculture, beyond anything you would ever even see in any other sort of farm. So in terms of containment, there's really no worries there. I mean, they have chain link fences. So.
I know
And
that,
it's not I'm not bringing them here to raise them and breed them. I'm bringing them there to perform a maintenance task, and then I'm taking them to another solar farm.
Correct. Correct.
So Norm, like, we don't get a special use permit for a lawnmower for them going there and cutting the lawn or them going there and spraying pesticides. What would be the difference of me bringing in
Well, would
30
you not-
sheep for a month?
Would you not call them agriculture?
What? The
Are sheep not agriculture?
agricultural animals?
Yes.
I don't know, how does that, where do we draw the line? I mean,
Well, that's what they are. I mean, we're bringing.
pardon? Yeah, it's a
They're-
temporary use.
Performing a job,
Right.
quite simply. Quite simply, they're performing a job.
I mean, I'd rather see your sheep there than 6 big giant lawnmowers, chugging gallons of gasoline.
Absolutely.
And Dave, I don't disagree. I'm just saying from a procedural standpoint, I think we have to go down the route of saying that we have to get a use variance for agriculture on this property.
So last
Because
time,
They
ar-
are there eating the
Okay.
vegetation.
But they're sleeping there too. I mean, they're gonna live there for 6 months.
month maybe,
No,
Month,
Month.
6 months would be,
way too long.
yeah.
no, I mean, they're
3
gonna be
months,
there the
yeah,
whole
at
time.
most.
They cut the grass for the whole year.
Yeah, but once they eat it
Yep.
down,
Right.
then
but
he's got to pull them because they
Right,
won't
but-
have nothing to eat.
Right, but that's why they determine how many they put on there based on the acreage. So they're
So-
gonna be there for months for the whole summer season.
But if I own the solar park and I want you to mow my stuff down in a month, you're gonna figure out the acreage, the amount of sheep, you're gonna bring them there, supply the water and the minerals, they're all locked in there.
Yep.
They're gonna do their thing within, say, that month. You're gonna come back, pull them sheep and hopefully take them to some other solar farm location.
Correct.
Only to
Okay.
bring them back a month or 2 later.
Yeah, as soon as the grass
Next
grows.
season, we do 1 mowing per season, 1 to 2, depending on growth. But generally, I mean, they like to keep the vegetation below knee height, so it's not like you're maintaining a lawn per se.
Oh, so they cut it all the way down and
Oh,
then,
they'll bring it right down.
They'll eat
To
it
the
right
bottom
down
of
to the
the
ground.
They'll
Okay.
bring it down to.
I don't know if they were your sheep or not, but they were at the power lines there by Staley and East River.
Okay.
And they were on the water side
Okay.
and they mowed that
Yep.
thing down.
No, yep.
There was nothing left,
and we should put them on the parkway.
That's exactly.
nothing
what-
left. They mowed it down like there was nothing there.
They do a great job
No.
on the hills and everything.
Yep.
so I've got a question for you, and it goes back to Councilman Tom DeGotti, a couple of town board meetings ago, posed the question, and you mentioned it a minute ago, the number is somewhere between 10 and a much higher number. And so I think he was trying to get at the number, trying to hone in, and I know it depends upon how long it takes, X number of sheep to do however many acres there are.
Yeah.
So when they get done eating this stuff down to the nubbins, and that takes takes 50 sheep, I don't know,
Let's just say-
2
we'll just
weeks?
call it- Yeah, we'll just call it 2 weeks.
Yeah, so then what do you do? Take them away to
Yep,
another
we
site?
We have 19 contracted solar farms in New York State.
So literally 50 sheep might not be there for 6 months, the growing
No.
season.
Correct. And of course, our sheep don't manage all of those solar farms. We do mow, but the ones that we do, we put the sheep on the smaller ones because those are the ones they can manage.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we
So
just
like
don't
if-
have enough sheep to cover all the acres. That we
So
have all
you're
around.
saying three acres per sheep,
Three sheep per
Per
acre.
per acre, okay,
Per
I'm sorry.
year.
Three
Per year.
sheep per acre. So if I have 50 acres,
Yep.
you're looking at 150 sheep.
Correct. If
And,
that was
and
for
then
the whole
how,
year.
if I had that,
Now-
let's just make this up. If I had a 50 acre parcel, a solar farm, and you're gonna bring in 150 sheep, how long will it take them to mow me down to say
I can't do that math off the top.
6 inches in height of,
Six,
I mean, they're not gonna be there 6 months.
No, correct.
I mean, when they were on East River, they ate that bank out of there like within weeks,
Yeah, correct.
the whole bank.
Yes, yes.
So I would say,
And there was at that time, when they were on the river, there was only 14 of them. And there was the whole stretch from the power tower to Staley.
Mhm.
So probably 300, 400, 500 feet, full beach. So beach frontage.
so generally, how long do you leave them on a site? A month? Is that fair to say?
Oh,
That-
The summer season is the safest. I mean, like I said,
Okay,
it's
give me
totally
the-
dependent on
What do you call the summer season?
from May to November is going to be our grazing season. Not summer
So
season.
if you were to put them on these solar sites here, they're gonna stay there basically all summer then.
They could.
They could,
Yes,
but not necessarily because we do have other sites that we graze.
okay.
So, but, you know, if you were to drive by, Dave, while all those sheep were out, you'd say, that's an agricultural piece of property. Wouldn't you? I mean, sheep are
Well, you would-
agriculture.
Yeah, you would think it would be a farm, but I
Yeah.
understand the purpose and I
Wouldn't
think
the
that-
easiest way to do it would be to change the special use permit required for a solar farm to allow,
You'd have to be changing the zoning laws to do that. So, but I think if we just go ahead and say that we will allow the special use permit provided they get a use variance
From the zoning board.
from the zoning board, which, that's,
Well,
yes.
that's basically-
Yeah,
Right.
and we've done that countless times before.
yeah, I don't have any issue with it.
I
Right.
can't believe
Is,
the zoning
is the
board's gonna
town,
go
is the
against it.
town board thinking
I
it might
agree.
have to go to the ZBA? Or? Yeah.
But it,
Okay, I'm gonna,
go ahead, if you want to make a motion.
I'm gonna make a motion that we approve this subject to town board approval. Is that okay? Or should we go to?
They're gonna take yours and consider it, so it really isn't.
Right.
subject to. It's your motion is something to the fact of approving, conditioned on and obtaining other permits as deemed necessary.
Yeah, and
Okay.
if the,
Or variance norm or whatever the terminology you want to use, but it's.
I'm gonna approve condition upon if they need any other
Board approvals.
approvals. Okay, does that sound right?
that sounds right. It's a blanket statement and I would second that.
Second, any further discussion? All in
Yeah.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Norm, did you vote? Not yet.
I'm just trying to digest what you just said. Contingent upon other board approvals,
If needed,
if required.
if required, all right.
Okay.
Norm's
You-
good,
you got
everybody's
me. I
good?
mean,
Okay, that's number one, and I'm gonna mimic that for number two. Same motion,
And I'll second it.
second by Bob. Any discussion? All in
Yeah.
favor?
Aye.
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 You're all
Oh.
set, sir. Thank
very
you.
much.
I
Have a
hope
nice
you
night.
can get this straightened out. Number 3, establishment of the Town of Grand Island Strategic Planning Commission. So this is the Long Range Planning Committee spinning off into this Planning Commission. Now, last long range planning meeting I was at, this past one, there was a lot of discussion on the parcel on Whitehaven and East River, changing from B1 to the R. 2 hours worth of discussion. It was very good meeting, a lot of good information, a lot of good heads at the table there. Does anyone have any questions or?
I just sort of questioned the label that's put on the Strategic Planning Commission. And I always look at strategic as being something that you're looking out 5 years and you're sort of reading the tea leaves as to, population growth and trends and things like that. It seems like this is going to be to deal with more immediate measures, not really what I would think of as strategic long-term issues. I'm not suggesting it doesn't have some value, but I don't really see it as strategic.
Okay, they're, Dave, on page 1 of their law draft, number 2 purpose. The strategic planning is vital to the future of the quality of life of Grand Island, taking into all considerations.
Yeah.
So does that cover what you're thinking or not cover?
I've read all this. It keeps repeating the word strategic planning is vital, and I would agree with that. But it seems like this, and I guess I would ask Pete, how the town board is going to use this group. Because it's a group of already appointed board members on various boards. I would think that the town board would be looking to more of an immediate reaction, i.e. what do you think of this idea? Not how does it fit into the strategy of the island over the next 5 years?
And I would add to that, anytime a local law is brought before us, we look back to the genesis of this thing. Why this? Why now? And, what are your thoughts in that regard?
Yeah. Right,
Well,
right.
I'm going to say something. Last meeting, Supervisor Whitney was on the Zoom, listened to the whole 2-hour spiel, which was all about that corner.
Yeah.
And his end comment was that he was very impressed with what was said, what was brought up, the people in the room, the whole table as a whole. He was actually made a comment that he'd like to make it some type of an advisory board, was his comment.
Yeah, I mean, that's where we struggle because most of the people on it are members already of an advisory board. So we're trying to keep it to be something different. Just for an example, what they're on now, I mean, we basically, as a town board, referred them our design standards and said, there's holes here, there's gaps, we see problems, we see reoccurring problems. Is this where we want to be in the future? Does this make sense? Go. And they've been digging, Dave can attest to this, they've been digging into it for several meetings, as far as signage, as far as front, roadside, as far as islands for in the center for traffic, as far as aesthetics of buildings, what we like, what we don't like, what we've seen that works, what we've seen that we don't think works. So to your point, I think that has a lot to do with the future because we basically task them with come forth with your best ideas as far as our going forward blueprint for our town. As far as aesthetics and stuff like that. And that's what they're on. And I'm going to tell you, they're going to be on it for probably 6 months to a year. It's not going to be like, we're not waiting for a decision to approve or deny a project. I think what they went through with Mr. Gerbank's situation was a on the spot, more you guys wrote the master plan. What do you mean by this? You know, so give us your input on what your thoughts were there. This is going backwards, but I really think a lot of what we're looking for from them is a kind of a going forward vision. You know, they don't really have the power to enact it, but they are certainly, you know, by committee doing a lot of the legwork. But you certainly don't want to hand to, no offense, but to a politician and say, here, write this, you know, because they're not going to do it by committee. They're going to do it by their own personal, you know, opinions. So the fact that that committee or commission or whatever you want to call it has every advisory board engaged is huge, because what the planning guys think isn't necessarily what the economic development people think. And no, we need to have this much signage to make this work. You know what I mean? So they all feed off each other, and I've seen a lot of conversation. I'll get beat to death, but they get it right before it goes forward, and I can appreciate that.
So would you envision a process, for example, the planning board person, whoever that is, would come back to the planning board and sort of lay out an issue and get some input from the rest of the board to then take back to the group as the representative?
That's the ultimate intent, is that everybody takes the information going on there back to their corners, so to speak, discusses it. And if there's a difference of opinion, then their representative again brings it back to the table.
Sure.
You know, so it's a really good, to me, I've been kind of involved with it since I sat in Dave's chair, you know, as a planning board guy. And it's been pretty interesting to watch the whole process, you know, and I will say that it's been very, what's the right word? It's not political. It's greater good.
Yeah.
You know, and I've seen everybody, you know, agree to disagree and do a good job with it, you know?
Yeah.
So
Dave, I haven't
Dave-
brought anything
Dave?
back to the planning board from the meetings I've been going to. Because right now, we just took the booklet.
Sure.
And I pointed out some things to them that we've always had issues with over and over, you know, like those center islands, for example. You know, we got to fix this. Spent a whole meeting just on talking about the islands, a whole meeting on the trees, a whole meeting. Now the secretaries went down all of the boulevard and taken pictures of all the buildings to come back to have a talk tank, because this book shows Orchard Park, East Aurora, Niagara on the Lake, Lewiston, and we're like, no, this is Grand Island. We want to concentrate here. And I haven't brought anything back because right now it's just a big giant talk tank type of thing.
I would assume you're going to pick your spots, and I think, you know, because we've talked about all those issues, the islands and so on, you know how this board feels about
Right.
those.
seen it. We've
But-
seen these.
But
Yeah.
it might also be helpful to maybe just have a standing agenda item to have you report on the 3 or 4 things that are being talked about.
Okay. Next meeting, I'll do that.
That might
Our
be a
June
good
meeting, I'll
idea.
do that. Because by then we should be starting to maybe making, right now, it's just a bunch of talk tanks about different topics. We haven't like zeroed in on what to actually do. But once, I'm hoping that starts next meeting, then I can come back to our meeting and say, hey, this is what happened.
Yeah, I think that would be a good solution.
Okay. Frank?
Dave and Pete, really. Pete, you just talked about, and everybody's talked about how good a job the Long Range Planning Committee is, and it's represented by everybody, and it goes back to the boards and so forth and so on. Why do you want another board that basically does the same thing? It doesn't make any sense to me. And the purpose of it, to me, reads like, when you said strategic, Dave said he likes that word. Well, strategic to whom? If you talk to the Conservation Committee, they'll tell you, hey, the trees are important. You talk to the business people, they'll say that. You got the school board in here. It just seems like another committee.
Well,
And it doesn't, the purpose seems like when I read it, it seemed like, it sounded like motherhood and apple pie. I mean, look, if you read it, it's, you know, it's good for everybody. And yet, it just didn't make
I
sense to
like
me.
Ike, huh?
Pardon me?
I like Ike.
That's for sure.
Pete, I've got a question and then really, I guess, a comment. So the question is, would this displace or replace the the so-called long-range planning committee, which exists today.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. it
Oh, it
will.
will.
It will completely.
So-
replace.
Oh,
So long,
it's
long
mo-
range
it's
plan,
amorphous. It's a metamorphosis.
I think long range planning was first for the master plan and
Correct.
then for the waterfront development.
Correct.
So they've kind of done their thing now
Yeah.
for those two items. So now this is the replacement to keep that, rename them and keep them going
Well,
forward
so-
under,
so
with different things.
I'll give you my opinion. I'm one vote of five. Everything we've given them, they have come out, and I don't agree with everything they say, but it's a committee, and I get that. But we keep handing them things because they're the only board that can do it. We're not going to hand the planning board the design standard and say, here, rewrite these and give us your recommendations, because you guys got work to do. I mean, ultimately, your board does work. You know what I mean? It's not a think tank. That's more of a thing. Dave, you said it on it. They're more of a think tank, back and forth. And they might spend 2 hours talking about one little microism, but it's got to be done. As far as what you're saying, Frank, it will replace the long range planning committee.
It doesn't say that.
Yeah, well, that's the intent. Okay, so and you guys can say that if you'd like to. But that is the plan. See, the committee is a supervisor appointed committee. So if John Whitney has a bad day, he can just say the committee's done and shut it off.
Well,
And
what,
then the work stops.
well, Pete, I
So
think
you
you
mean
answered,
for-
you answered my
for this new
question
one?
in that you're gonna replace.
Yeah.
You're gonna, the long-range planning committee would cease to exist with the installation of this
Correct.
commission or whatever you
Yes,
want to
That's
call it.
correct.
And the comment I was alluding to earlier, with Zoom meetings and with everything being televised and so forth. So all of us have the opportunity, and I watch, I guess, most of the long-range planning committee meetings. Some of them are an hour and a half, most of them are 2.5 hours. And
They're exhausting.
my, yeah, I guess my concern, like any committee, and this talks in the body of this law, local law talks about, mandatory attendance and so on and so forth. My observation of the committee is it's got maybe, I don't know, 14 or 15 members. In any one of those meetings, there's maybe about half the people present. So is that really representative, I guess, is the question. And I know I'm taking a shot.
Yeah, I know.
And maybe
I know.
not fairly, but
I
it's just an observation.
so
So half the committee is making 100% of, the input.
yeah, but there's obviously certain boards that have more input, I'll say, on certain things. Like one that doesn't attend very often, which I'm disappointed on, but I hopefully will get there, is the Architectural Review Board, especially since we're doing the design standards. I'm kind of hoping they get somebody a little more up to that, that's willing to come to those and at least take the information back to them. Not like the Historic Preservation Board is getting more and more active. Every board who seems to show up stays, but it seems like it's been a long pull to get somebody there for
Yeah.
each board.
So
For a year and a half, we didn't have anybody from the planning board because, again, you guys are busy. You guys get an agenda. There's work involved with it. It's not just show up to a meeting and high hand everybody. You guys do a lot of research on your own, and you look at sites, you understand them. So I certainly didn't push anybody too hard to come. Now that Dave's coming, he's actually brought a lot to the table. A lot of things that they weren't seeing before. So thank you, Dave, for showing up and putting your.
can I make a little suggestion?
Go ahead,
You
Brad.
have
You can
members,
make all the suggestions you want.
you have members from all the boards on the island.
Yeah.
If you're having a hard time with people not showing, why not make it so the planning board, Dave is appointed from the planning board to this, but if he can't make it, have alternates from the planning board that could fill in his stay.
And we've said that.
Yeah, we've
Yeah, I
talked
brought
about
that
that.
up a couple
Yeah.
meetings.
Yeah.
ago, and
So if
everybody
you can't
agreed
go,
that
then
if I
somebody
can't
else
go,
can
that
go.
somebody can chip
Right.
in.
So
if I
listen,
can't
we've been batting this around for a while on how to do it and what to do because it's kind of something different than we've ever done. And we're not saying what we put in front of you is exactly what we want. I mean, we're here for your input. If you think it should have some different things in it, then say it.
So, I mean,
know?
in the instance that there's an agenda item that's coming up that other members of a board may have some input on.
Yeah,
Are they open to go to this meeting as well?
yeah. I mean, I don't think they care if there's 50 people in the room, you know, it's just if there's a voting type scenario, they'd like one representative from each board. You know, and not like, we don't, it wouldn't be palatable to have 5 planning board members there voting.
Right, no, I understand
You
that,
know what
right,
I'm
no, no.
saying?
Peter,
So everybody says,
Me-
One board, one vote.
How would you envision who on which board represents that board?
Chairman's,
Doesn't say that.
that's how they've been doing it, chairman's. They start at the chair.
They haven't started with the chair, and if the chair is not interested or busy, they've been delegated. It said, I think it said somewhere, I don't know if it says in there or not,
Doesn't.
but one of the versions said chair or delegate.
Pete?
Yep.
Just to clean this up.
Yep.
You propose as law. Shouldn't you also propose a law that the long range committee is no longer, once this comes in?
And-
Because otherwise, 2-3 years down the road, we're gonna have 2 committees.
Well,
We're gonna have 2 sets of laws, one for long range and whatever they engage, just to clean it up.
we don't
and
have a
one
law
for-
for the committee.
Pardon?
The committee's not on the code. That's a supervisor appointed committee. So it doesn't like exist.
Well, it exists. So if you look on the town's website, there's a thing called the Long Range Planning
Yeah,
Committee,
but
isn't there?
I could be wrong, but I don't think it's anywhere in our zoning. book.
Well, it may not be,
Right.
but de facto, I mean, it exists out there, you
Right.
know? I guess, you know,
I have no problem putting a
Yeah.
sunset on that to
yeah.
do this.
And
You know,
I'll
I
just,
can't speak for the rest of the board, but I think we're all on the same page.
And
yeah,
I think that's what they want too.
Yeah.
They want to be moved from long range to this.
It doesn't really give them any more authority or power. It just enables them to continue, but it enables them to continue in perpetuity.
Right.
You know, not until the supervisor or a
Disband.
future supervisor
Right.
tries to disband it. We want them around to hand them these projects to help steward the long range plan, which is always going to change. Because it's, I mean, 5 years from now,
right.
the long range plan that's current will be, I won't say null and void, but it's certainly going to have some interesting challenges. That maybe there has to be some change in direction.
Well, not only that, but the long range or the master plan is now 4 years old.
Right.
So, you know, I mean, it's a living document
Correct.
that needs to be
Right.
attended to. And so maybe that's one of the subsets or the responsibilities, duties or whatever of this,
Not-
of this.
Yeah.
The other thing is, and kind of alluding to what Dave said earlier, and I don't mean to be flippant in anything I'm about to say, but when I hear the word commission,
Yeah.
it's like, you know, I don't know, I'll pick a name, the Mueller Commission or the Warren
The Warren
Commission,
Commission.
or
Right,
the
right.
this or the, you know, the Commission on Human Rights and blah,
Right.
blah, 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 blah. I just think, you know, labels connote something. And I think maybe we can just call it,
Commission was literally a word.
you know, if you want to
Put on
call
the
it
page.
strategic, I've got no problem with the word strategic. Strategic, long-range planning
Committee.
board or committee or something along those lines.
Right.
And then, you know, with the rest of what's in here, what it embodies and what it's supposed to be doing in a formal sense,
Right,
because
right.
everything else up to this point has kind of been, throw it against the wall, informal, you know,
right.
we'll talk about it. I
Well,
mean,
yeah.
You know, the last time the zoning code was changed in wholesale fashion was about 18 years ago, and that took 4 or 5 years to
Yeah.
come to fruition. So,
I think you're going to see a lot of that stuff starting to come forth because we see from our master plan that we got some large gaps and disparities considering what we want to be and what we're allowed to do. One of it being mixed use. It doesn't exist in our code. The only way you can do it is to have a PDD, you know, so right there is something that we've talked about. We've talked about design standards on a residential, you know, lot. Are we following them? And if we are they what we want? Recently, the EDAB did a market analysis for commercial in the area, and it really dove into a bunch of things on Grand Island, what's what, and some of the biggest comments out of there were, let's not do anything more aggressive than we've already done regarding density and stuff. Everybody tends to like our neighborhoods. Let's not blow it. They had a couple examples of neighborhoods they felt were underplanted with trees and bushes and landscape and all that. And they felt that they could have been a much nicer finished product if there was more attention paid to them. So again, that's something that we want to build in. We're trying to listen to all these cues we're getting from these studies and keep ourselves at least here, not sink below it, you know?
Yeah,
Pete, with this new law, are these the same committees, the conservation, park, so forth, as what was in the old one? Or is this in addition to it? It says it's school board, chamber of commerce and so forth.
That's who.
Some of them aren't even government or Grand Island boards. or-
Well, some
School board,
were
for example,
appointed
isn't-
to the original committee.
Pardon?
Just about everything on there was appointed to the original committee, whether they
Show
input
up
it
or
or not.
not is another story, but basically okay,
It's-
this is
it's-
basically the same as before.
It's the same. And
The
the
other
reason for
thing
the
is,
school
the other
is,
thing, the other
ahead.
thing is, this is so encompassing. There's nothing here that says we ought to have, at one time we had a planning consultant. We brought, was a consultant who was paid by the town.
Mhm.
It seems like something like this, we should have a provision in here that if they want to hire a planning consultant
I
to help
believe
them, they ought to be able to
it's in
do
there.
that.
It's in there.
It's in there?
It's in there that by occasion with the town board's
Approval.
approval.
It's in there?
Yeah, so they can't, so this commission or whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
can't go out and hire people on their own. But if they come to the town board asking for this, that we can enable it and do RFPs and all that stuff to give them planners or whatever it is they're working on, you know, maybe it's architectural, landscape design. Maybe that's where we're at. Maybe we need a specialist.
A lot
Okay, we
lot of
get
the planners, Frank, too, are grants.
Pardon me?
A lot of the planners are grant programs.
well, the thing with grants, though, somebody has to foot that bill. And a lot of
Okay.
times the grants might be matching funds, so it comes
Percentages,
out of the
correct.
taxpayer's pocket. What I wouldn't want to see happen is have a local law enacted and then it's kind of a blanket, well, this is local law X of 2022, which is the Full Employment Act to go out and hire consultants
Yeah.
anytime you have a question,
Yeah.
you know?
We've,
Because it comes out of our pockets.
We've
We
watered
want-
that down quite a bit, where pretty much any expenses are gonna go through the town board. You know, so they're not gonna go out on their own.
Which is where they should go.
Yeah, I mean, because the best of buck stops with us,
Mhm.
you know, so, it's just basically a group that we're enabling to, I'll say, over-research everything to get it right, you know? And I'm sorry, but you're not gonna get 5 politicians to sit there and have an objective opinion. They're gonna have their own opinion, you know, and I think,
Believe me, I agree exactly what you're saying.
yeah, so I mean, this is a group, so your conservation people are very interested in conservation and they speak up. Dave's very interested in what he sees in planning, he speaks up. So now you're getting a hodgepodge of all the board's opinions or somebody from their boards,
Right.
you know?
And just, I don't want to get too technical here, but the terms of the committee members is, I think, awkward based on the terms that they have on their own boards.
Okay.
I think it's going to get complicated because somebody could be appointed to this board for, as I read it, 5 years.
Okay.
But if that person's term expires on the board they're on, for example, if Dave's term,
Right,
then what happens?
yeah.
But isn't that for the
Yeah.
at-large?
So there is 3 at-large members on this board,
Yes,
just to bring us back to reality, we're hoping,
Right.
you know what I mean? And-
but I would assume there'd be 3 at large there. So then, and I'll use Dave as an example. Does he get appointed as an at large and then the at large person kicked off?
No,
I don't,
that's,
I don't-
and
I think that,
I won't argue with that.
yeah, I think
because
that,
It's a little cumbersome.
yes.
Yeah.
Shouldn't the at-larges not be a member of any other board or committee?
That's the plan.
Okay.
Yeah, the at-large people
So-
should be from the community.
So you just edit that to state that the member is a member as long as he holds that position with his.
Well,
current
I don't-
board.
I don't
Except you
even
got
know-
You got 11 boards here and 3 at large seats. It just,
I don't,
it's going to be awkward.
I don't know that you even put terms on people who come from advisory boards. They're just a chair or delegate of.
Oh, right, yeah,
This
that makes
board,
sense.
right,
Right.
so- if
Chair
I
or
was-
delegate of this board, and then you have your 3 at-large members, which I think there's a couple on there now, and they're really good.
But
You know, I've seen them be good, but I think since they don't qualify or disqualify by their board, they need something to say, how long are you on it? You know, what's your sentence?
Well, I just think that needs to
Well, I
be
mean, it
cleared out
should
because
be
it
at
does
the-
say members.
Yeah.
So that would be all of them.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
Do
So-
we,
Pete, I would change that last sentence on section 3B. As we talked about before, the remaining members will be the chairperson of each of the following advisory boards and organizations or their designee.
Does it say that or doesn't?
It doesn't say that.
Then let's say that.
Yeah, I
We should
agree.
say that.
I have no
And-
problem.
And
with
I, not to make it any larger, I would include the highway department. I think they have a big stake
Mhm.
and they're not listed there.
that. Well, traffic safety is.
Well, traffic safety is one thing. The highway department is maintenance and, you know,
Agreed. Agreed.
um,
You know, so just so you know, like at a long range planning meeting, there could be 100 people. You know, if that's what it takes.
true, but
You know what I mean? And they have called in certain people before and said, you know what, we're talking about this. Can you come here and talk to our board so we understand it? And it wasn't a mandatory attendance. It was more, come on in and tell us, this is your wheelhouse.
okay, but
You
the
know-
highway department has a day-to-day involvement with everything, you know, every road on the island.
I'm completely open to everybody's input.
so do we want to kind of go do a round table thing here and add what we want to add?
I mean, if you want to do a round table, great. If you want to take it home, mark it all up and come in with everything we talked about next month, that's
What-
fine. I
what
mean,
do you
this
guys-
isn't,
what do you
this
guys
isn't a
feel
fire
more-
drill.
What do you feel more comfortable? You want to do it
Yeah,
for
why don't
next
we-
month?
Yeah, why don't we come up with our own ideas and then why don't we go over it half an hour before our meeting next month?
I don't care if you guys bang stuff around in emails. It said,
Oh, we could do that.
we're
as
not trying to
well,
rush
yeah.
it through. We're just trying to get it right, you know, and
Is that good with everybody? We'll
Yeah.
table till next month.
Hey,
and this
Pete, I
gives
don't know
us
what's going
all-
on with your screen.
send your comments, sure.
Okay, so I'm gonna make a motion to table number 3 till next month. And that the planning board members will go through this, make sure we get as many notes as you feel necessary, you know, name changes, what the point Norm said. Dave had points, Bob had points, Frank,
I mean, if-
Brad, everybody had
And
some
I'd only
points.
ask if you have really substantial changes, that maybe you make a copy of it and we give them all to Arlene.
Okay,
So that,
Yeah.
that the whole thing can go to the board as a
Yep.
package.
Right.
And we can
Okay.
sort through it and.
Yeah, we
cross
can
off
do
what
this
we've
all
done.
via
Yep.
email, right?
yeah,
You
Back
know?
and forth. Yeah,
Said,
sounds
it's-
good.
It's not a fire drill. We're just trying to get it right.
okay, I
You know?
made a motion to table,
So moved.
so move, any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Pete.
Communications, I'm gonna put received and filed.
Okay.
Now, communications attorney advertising,
Receive and file.
Yeah, I agree.
that's a
Yeah,
receive
Yeah, we
and
did that
file.
last time, yeah.
Receive and file.
That's a town board thing.
Received and filed.
Would
Okay,
this also go to the town board?
number 1 under unfinished business is
Tops Plaza.
Tops Plaza,
Nobody
and there's
here.
no one here from Tops Plaza. Did they
Okay.
say they might come in, Bob, or? Anyone on Zoom, Pete?
There is somebody, but they're just, they're not talking or showing us who they are. I was thinking it might be.
It is our.
Well, you know, in terms of Taos Plaza, and it's reflected in our minutes, there were about 10 items that we brought up that we wanted further input from Benderson or answers to, or, you know, whatever. And the overriding one, in addition to that, was the Department of Transportation acting on the access egress from the highway. And so until that's resolved, everything else, the other 9 or 10 points are moot points. So I guess the ball is in the courts of the DOT and Benderson thereafter to respond to our points. Because whatever the DOT comes up with could change the complexion of this entire plan, site plan.
Yeah, I've done a little bit of homework on it, and I guess I'd like to include my comments into the record
Go ahead.
And then Benderson can read them and maybe come back with more specificity on at least the issues that I have.
Go ahead, Dave.
So I don't think there's any question that the coffee shop is a Starbucks, and let's assume it is, because that's what Benderson seems to be doing. If I did some homework on the American Planning Association, and they have an extensive report on shopping centers. And just for a reference, the Tops Plaza is about 87,700 square feet. That the Tops is 56.7, and the balance of the plaza is 31,000. So 87,700 square feet is an important number. The American Planning Association references a 3-to-1 ratio of parking to square footage of plaza space. So that means that 263,100 square feet of land needs to be assigned to parking. With the new outbuildings that Benderson has shown, there's only 135,800 square feet, or a ratio of about 1.5 to 1 versus the 3-to-1 recommended by the American Planning Association. Currently, without the outbuildings, the ratio is 2-to-1. There's about 180,000 square feet designated to parking. And I would note this, because I think it's an important note. The planning study that I looked at included some urban plazas. Now, an urban plaza has people that can walk to it as well as drive their car. And I think we all need to admit that for the most part, people using the Tops Plaza drive their car. Secondly, some of the plazas in the study area were in warm climates, so they didn't include extensive areas for snow storage in the wintertime. And I think it's also important to note that the town is growing. I mean, just vis-a-vis some of the developments that the town board and the planning board have just recently authorized. But we also have a town code, and the town code calls for 5 spaces for each 100,000 or each 1,000 square feet. So by that criteria, we need 438 spaces. With the new outbuildings, I count only 355 spaces. So we're short approximately 100 spaces of parking. And I think there's a viable solution to that for Benderson in the property that they own just to the south of the plaza, to put a parking lot there for what I would suggest is 100 cars with a pedestrian crosswalk that would take them safely over from that parking area to the Tops Plaza. So I don't think it's a deal breaker, but I think we have to recognize that significant parking needs to be added if those outbuildings are actually approved. The second part I looked at was the Starbucks queuing lane, and I think we brought this up at our last meeting. And it's interesting to note, and Bob is probably aware of this, but the New York State DOT is currently studying Starbucks and Tim Hortons across the state for their impact on queuing, particularly as it impacts their highways. The study isn't completed yet, but it's kind of interesting to note that this is a priority for the New York State DOT to see how they impact theirs. But I also found a study called countingcars.com, which studies queuing requirements for Starbucks basically across the country. And they go through some chart and graph, and you can pick off what I would pick off the 85th percentile. And the 85th percentile comes to a minimum of 13 cars in the queue and a distance of 260 feet. And I think as I looked at the plan, there was only a plan for, I think, 9 cars in the queue and something closer to 200 feet rather than 260 feet. It's also interesting to look at the current developments that Benderson has put in, one on Delaware, in Kenmore, and one recently in Hamburg that the planning board in Hamburg addressed last Thursday night. And in each case, they approved and Benderson agreed to a queuing of 15 cars. And I think we should have a minimum of that same number here on Grand Island. So I think they need to relook at the plan. I think if I were planning it, I could come up with some options for not only the parking, but also the queuing that wouldn't necessarily cause them to not have that as an outbuilding, but I think you can find a place for 15 cars to queue. And most importantly, I think we need to understand that no matter what number of cars we have in the queue, there's going to be times when there's going to be more, there's going to be times when it's going to be less. So I think Benderson needs to tell us when it's more, where those cars end up. In the parking lot would be fine. If they're ending up in the entrance or on the state road, that's not a good thing.
Yeah,
I'm
because
done.
Tim Hortons on the island when the queue's there, because we're there a lot doing construction work,
Right.
getting coffee.
Yeah.
To get to the where you're gonna order, there's 8 to 10 cars and they're wrapped all the way around almost to shut off the one entrance by the car dealership.
Yep. Right.
So I agree with you that I don't think that's enough.
Yeah.
And we definitely don't want what happened to Krispy Kreme donuts on the boulevard when they were stacked down Niagara Falls Boulevard for
Right.
their queue.
Yep. Yep.
So with that entrance being right there that they're talking, that could happen. They could come out and be out that entrance.
Yep. Yep.
So anyone else have anything else? I'd like to see, I know they gave us this drawing here, but I'd like to see the service doors in the back, what they're gonna look like. Are they just gonna be a metal slab and nothing with a light next to them? Are they gonna decorate them? Considering that's gonna be, all the other stores in the plaza are gonna be looking at the back of that outbuilding.
And to that
I
point,
sent an email to everybody in the board. I don't know if anybody had a chance to look at it or not yet, but as we were talking about the building that they built on Delaware and Sheridan, which is basically the same building they want to look here. If you look at that email that I sent you, they have all four sides of it. You can't tell which is the front or which is the back.
Is that the
It's-
one with the stone with the brick
Oh, I mean,
borders?
it's beautiful.
Yeah.
I sent a picture.
I just went past one and I forgot to.
I mean, if you want to look at the pictures.
I think it's a.
You can't tell one side of the building from the other. And then they come to Grand Island and we get 3 brick walls and now they want to paint some fake windows on it.
I think you're spot on, Brad, and that picture is worth 1,000 words. That's what we'd like to see here.
and
Yeah.
same with like trash removal. They have to put their trash somewhere. So that's gonna go where? In the back and we're gonna look at it?
No, they're gonna have that little dumpster thing off to the side. Like, you can't see it here, but when you come down here, Amy, they were having an angled dumpster. And I brought up to them, they have a dumpster at their Niagara Falls Boulevard,
Mhm.
Lowe's Plaza, and it's done in this, I think it's artificial bushes or
Yeah.
something all the way up. And
Right,
it doesn't appear to be a dumpster enclosure.
right.
And I mentioned that to him last time around. So I think they need to do a little bit more here architectural
Yeah, I
wise,
think-
for
and
sure.
I don't think I appreciate what they gave us as something to look at, because it's not very different than last time that they presented. But it also looks as if, like, what are these panels? You know, tell us what you're proposing on these 3 sides of the building. The east side, fine, south side, okay. But the west and the north are where I have a problem.
They could better do this by putting the whole thing on the south side behind their mini mart. That's,
I was thinking the same thing.
move the whole thing right over there.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
And they have plenty of room for
Oh, yeah.
queuing of their cars and everything else.
Yep.
Yep, that would be ideal.
Then they wouldn't have to move the entranceway from the
right.
boulevard and everything.
Right.
I think they need to come back with us with a little more input here. So
And
I'm
I'm
gonna,
I'm least concerned about the back of a building being finished if it's not backing up to a parking lot and the plaza in
Other
front of it,
buildings.
or behind it rather. I mean, if it's the back of the building behind it, we don't care what the back of tops looks like, right?
yeah, but if
Putting
you,
this
were-
thing in the middle of the parking lot like they've done everywhere else, they finish them all the way around, and they come here, they want to give us block building.
Right.
yeah, plus the whole back is gonna be facing
Right,
the
you,
the
you're-
auto parts
front
store,
of
the
other
pizzeria,
stores.
Exactly.
liquor store,
Yeah.
so those folks are gonna be looking at the back of this building.
This big giant beige building.
Right.
That's
Yep.
my concern.
Okay,
What's that?
there's a portion. Okay, so we'll leave them on as, and we'll just leave them on as unfinished business.
My understanding of the email I got today, because I was trying to find out if DOT was going to respond. I'm hearing that DOT asked to have, so their comments were due the 11th. It puts them obviously after this meeting, the 11th was in time to be able to have it in front of the town board. However, DOT apparently has requested to be able to respond by the 15th, which is actually going to push it after the next town board meeting. So it's appropriate that we may hear something from DOT and this board then may be able to, have more things to discuss depending on the outcome of those comments.
Sure.
And they obviously didn't address all the issues that we gave them last meeting anyway.
Well, they
Is it
Not
haven't really
even
addressed any of them.
remotely close.
Is it something that I should have Arlene send them a letter, or do you talk to them in your discussions, Bob, to tell them, hey, the planning board, this is kind of,
Well,
we'd
it's,
like
it's,
you to.
it's in our minutes though, Dave, and I think it,
When the minutes are available, I mean.
Okay,
yeah, the minutes have been approved this meeting, so they're in the public domain.
Well, they were at the last meeting.
Well,
Right.
well,
This
correct,
one
but
now becomes What's codified out of today's discussion.
Okay, I'm-
We've had this discussion going on a couple other items.
Right.
You know.
And
I'm gonna have,
Arlene, I can forward you my notes too.
and our,
Because to be quite honest, this is now on YouTube.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
They plain and simply, I can suggest that they pull up, fast forward through the stuff that doesn't pertain to their project, and take a listen to what was discussed.
Sure.
tonight.
okay, I'm gonna have Arlene send them a letter to, have them either look at the YouTube and or our minutes before they come back next month.
It'll be up tomorrow.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
and we strongly recommended that they look at the south property.
okay, I'm gonna have you speak that into your mic, Norm. Arlene, I'm hoping you can hear Norm here.
It's strongly recommended that they take a look at the locating new facilities south of the existing tops behind their existing mini mart.
And Arlene, I know you can't talk back to us, but we've got Brad, Norm, Frank, Dave, Amy, Bob, and myself as members tonight. Just so that you know who was here. Okay, motion to adjourn. Oh, what's up with that? That thing's been. Go ahead.
That's what I wanted to say, basically, you guys asked Arlene to send a letter, I don't know that there was any. So, this board sent a letter that said, please tell us your intent of moving forward with the project, or we'll remove you from the agenda. Now, whether we got a response, this board can remove it from agenda if it so desires.
You want to give them until next
You
meeting?
want to give them
that's
until
like
next
Just
meeting?
give
Give
them
one more month.
One more month and
Yeah.
then we'll pull them next month.
It was only tabled December 14th, 2020, so.
I know,
Right,
that's,
I mean, but we
Well,
just
well-
sent them a letter, so
where is that one at, the one on Whitehaven?
Alvin,
that's the one behind the Island Pet Lodge.
You show up.
Oh, behind the car dealership.
You know
Yeah,
the
yep,
garage
yep.
you guys approved for the guy for the storage barn? It's
Yep.
basically right next- That's the disturbance that was going on with him building that new garage.
Yep.
It's essentially right next door to that. It's east of that.
And they haven't come back in since 2020?
Those tabled then for the moratorium, and then
But the moratorium's been off for months.
so Arlene sent them a letter recently?
Yeah.
So this
Last
board, in
meeting.
its last meeting, asked Arlene to send a letter to the applicant requesting
Okay.
them to either provide an update of if they're
Okay.
considered to be active or not, or you guys would strike their
No,
application.
we'll-
So we'll,
We'll leave them on for the
Move we
rest of
table
another
the
month.
next meeting. and
Will we
then if
table
they're-
to June?
Yep, okay. Now, is there a motion to adjourn?
motion to
One,
adjourn.
one item, Chairman,
Go ahead.
5/12 of the way through the year, we've not done any training yet.
Okay, Arlene?
Well, I mean, to me, it'd be nice if we could come up with something different than going through those things every time.
Suggestions?
I know we had somebody come in to talk about the water system and we talked about maybe having somebody do the sewer system. And I think that was ball in Bob's court.
Do you think you could give
Um,
us like a little half-hour blurb
Bob, you could
next
probably
next
do it
meeting?
ad
I was,
hoc.
I was saying, you could do it yourself, I'm sure.
Just some drawings and, show us the laterals.
We'd,
I
we'd
mean,
love to hear
there's a
from you.
lot of talk that you hear. Is the system big enough? Can it handle this subdivision and that subdivision? I keep hearing that same repetition over and over and over again. And that I was always under the understanding that it is big enough, except when we have excessive stormwater.
Stony Point, Heath Road.
Then we run into a problem.
Substantially low, well below the design capacity.
Mhm.
It's spikes of when Mother Nature has, when the snow is melting off and it's raining on top of that, and all the manholes that are in the front yards are completely buried under stuff. That's when literally it all goes sideways. And that's why we're under the order on consent.
All right, so
Yeah,
can we get you to give us a little something, 15, 20 minutes next, perfect.
I also thought, Bob, the note you sent to the town board, I think to Mike, retention, detention basins, I thought was really well done on your part. And something this board might like to hear about too. So another topic.
Another quick question. I'm on the assessment review board this month. Do you want me to ask Judy if she wants to do another thing on Grand Island taxes?
Sure, that'd be great.
And
Because
update
we
us.
haven't had one in years. Okay. Okay.
Well, I mean, other ideas would be electric distribution, gas distribution. Those would be very interesting, I think.
I think we need an electrical engineer to.
National fuel that are really, they're totally independent of the town.
They are, but I mean,
We can, we have.
how many
some-
people know how many substations we have on Grand Island?
we have enough
where they're
connections, we could
located?
get somebody, I'm sure.
What line serves them?
Dave Bauer, I
Only
think.
one line serves Grand Island.
Somebody from
I
the
think a
Thruway
lot of
Authority would be
people
great,
are
too.
under the miscommunication that we can just keep building solar parks till we're blue in the face here.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, the plan. Yeah,
Mhm.
the plans that they have for shutting down the bridge the next time, when is it to paint it? And what's the plan? Because they're always in that series. It might be 2027 or 2028. Something. the
Okay,
town
are
should know
we,
about.
we,
Well, why don't you guys spitball other ideas?
yep, we will.
Let's talk next meeting.
Okay. Okay, so
Great.
we're,
Because I agree that those type of educational pieces are much better than mom.
Yeah.
And everybody takes away a lot.
plus I think the modules are starting to repeat themselves.
Well, you guys,
Think
it's
we-
like cheating, you know the answer.
We already, we've been through so many. Okay, we made a motion and in a second.
So moves.
All to adjourn.
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks, everyone. See you next meeting.